All right, hey everybody, it's Mike Gill from the Sports Bash. It's another edition of On the Couch with Mike Gill, which we're going to start doing more often here on the YouTube channel, where basically we'll answer a lot of topics that are coming up throughout the course of the day. Today, we talked to Scott Wright from DraftCountdown.com, and should the Eagles trade up for a quarterback in the draft? We asked Scott that question. Now, I'll preface it by saying I don't think the Eagles should trade up in the draft, and I like how people get so angry on these message board and on our Facebook page. Like this guy here, it's pretty funny. Sean posts on our Facebook page and says, "No, the Eagles fans all over aren't asking such a stupid bleeping question or debating this nonsense. Gotta love the media bleeps who don't have bleep for a story, so they start this nonsense. Eagle fans are smarter than that." Yeah, Sean, you're probably right. The media people are the only people out there who have suggested this very thing happening, possibly trading up to get Marcus Mariota. Something says that that's not how it happens. Look, I understand it's far-fetched, but the conversation is valid. The Eagles have a quarterback issue, and Chip Kelly is now in charge. And when you are talking about an offseason, it is the media's job to go over every possibility. We wouldn't be doing our job if we didn't go over those possibilities. So guys like Sean, who act like it's the media only who are talking about these things, these stories come up based on, number one, the media doing their job, and number two, the fans who bring these things up. So then when that is brought up, the media follows up on it and says, a lot of people are discussing getting Marcus Mariota. Is this a possibility? Just because the media brings it up, it doesn't mean that's what they think should or will happen. Many times the media asks questions to get the fans' reaction. And it's not to get your reaction in a positive or negative way. It's to gauge your reaction. It's to gauge whether or not you want this to happen or you don't want it to happen. It's not the media trying to stir things up. That is where fans who have this disdain for the media have this disconnect. We ask questions. I particularly will post questions on our Facebook page or on our Twitter page asking your opinion on something, not what we think. Just because we post the question doesn't mean that's what we think. I don't think the Eagles should trade for a quarterback, Marcus Mariota or Jameis Winston. Now, if Jameis Winston is there at pick 10 or 12 or 15, then yes, I think the Eagles should possibly try to figure out a way to get there. Going up to number 1 or number 2, not going to happen, and it shouldn't happen. But don't get angry because somebody asked a question. A lot of times these questions come from the fans, and that's why we ask them. Because I certainly don't think the Eagles should trade up for a quarterback. It's not like, let me sit around my office and think, what would be the most bizarre question I can ask Scott Wright? This question came from various message boards and Eagles sites that fans post on. So, Sean, you're better than that. This is an interesting reaction from Steven, who writes, "Sure, why not give up on a franchise quarterback right before he becomes one and try to groom another one into one?" He's basically a Foles fan, and he's suggesting that Foles is ready to become a franchise quarterback. Steven, I got news for you. If you think that, then you're going to be disappointed. Nick Foles is a nice player. He's got marginal talent, average talent, good talent, whatever you want to call it. He's not an elite player. He's not a franchise quarterback. It doesn't mean he can't play. It doesn't mean he can't win games in this league. Nick Foles can win games for you in this league, but just like the Eagles, he's not good enough to beat the very good teams. He's good enough to beat the teams he should beat. But Nick Foles isn't going to beat playoff teams on consecutive weeks for you. He's limited right now. And you took Deshaun Jackson away from him, so now he lost an elite talent, which makes him an average player look like an average player. When he had an elite talent, Nick Foles looked like a good player. He's not a franchise quarterback, especially in this offense. He's going to put up big-time numbers, and he's going to beat some bad teams. What happened to him in the Arizona game? What happened to him in the San Francisco game? What happened to him, in the playoffs game last year? He looked like an average player. Against good playoff teams, he looked like an average player. I like Nick Foles. I'm glad that you like Nick Foles. But to suggest that the Eagles shouldn't look for an upgrade at that position is, I don't know. It's crazy to me. I like Foles, and I appreciate what Foles did, and he had a special season. But just like this Eagles team, not good enough. They're 10-6. They beat 8 bad teams and 2 pretty good teams. Dallas on Thanksgiving Day, and they beat Indianapolis. Indianapolis, I would say, is on the lower tier of the top 8. They'd probably be about the 8th or 7th best team in the league. And the Eagles are, somewhere right around there. They're like they finished 20th in the draft rankings or whatever. So, look, the Eagles are what they are right now. They're a good team, not a great team. They need some work. All right, let's answer a couple more of these questions on this very topic. Andrew says, didn't our offense score 54 touchdowns last year? You don't have to sell the farm because you keep losing 31-28. This is what I love. Andrew, did you not look at the schedule of games? Did you not see the scores of the games that they lost? They scored 54 touchdowns. That is accurate. However, their offense did not score 54 points. Their offense scored 43 points, 11 touchdowns, I should say. He said 54 touchdowns. 43 touchdowns offensively, 11 touchdowns special teams and defense. You don't keep losing 31-28. That's the problem. You keep losing games where you are not scoring. And he goes on to say you just have to find the players to make it so you win 28-24. Okay, that would be great too. The problem is you weren't scoring that many points in the games you lost. That's why you're losing these games. And I did a quick little breakdown of this. The offense actually scored 43 touchdowns. They had 11 touchdowns from the special teams and defense. In their 6 losses, 10-6, in their 6 losses, they only averaged 21 points a game. And when Nick Foles lost, they averaged 20 points a game. When Mark Sanchez lost, they averaged 21 points a game. So in reality, games versus good teams, their offense wasn't good enough. That's the problem. We know their defense had issues, but in games where, the guy writes that their offense is scoring and they're losing games 31-28, but that's not the case. They're not losing games 31-28. They're only scoring 21 points a game when they lose. The game against Arizona, they lost 21-20. If they could score, they would have won that game. In the game against San Francisco, they scored 21 points, but their offense scored 0. 3 touchdowns from defense and special teams. If their offense could score once in that game, they would have beat San Francisco. So, in reality, yes, their defense had problems. I'm not discounting that. But their defense didn't lose those 2 games for them. He goes on to say the offense was fine last year, even with all the turnovers. We missed the playoffs because our secondary spent way too much time looking up and seeing the football sail right over their heads into the arms of fast receivers. We lost to Green Bay, Dallas, Arizona, and Washington because we couldn't cover and gave up a ton of points. Keep Foles, bring in another weapon on offense, and rebuild that secondary. All right, they lost to Green Bay because, yes, they got bombed. The Dallas game, they got beat the second time because the defense was poor. The Washington game, I would agree. They lost because their defense was not very good in that game. Arizona, they got beat deep in that game, and that's the play everybody remembers. But realistically, They gave up 21 points defensively. I can't blame the defense for that loss. When your offense averages 29 points a game, which is actually 24 points a game, if you take the 11 touchdowns the special teams gave up, you got to win that game. Nick Foles has to win that game. The two losses that hurt them the most were San Francisco and Arizona. Two games that they should have won, but their offense was inept. And I put a lot of blame on their offense as to why they're not in the playoffs, and that goes back to the whole Deshaun Jackson thing. The two games they lost is because they couldn't score more than 21 points. This is a team that should be scoring more than 21 points, specifically when their defense gives up 24 or less. They should be winning those games. All right, that's all on this topic for now. We'll have more on it on the Sports Bash. Listen to my interview with Scott Wright from DraftCountdown.com. It's a really informative interview. He talks about this topic, talks about corners, safeties, and this draft class coming up. And I'll be back right here on the YouTube channel at 97.3 ESPN for more On the Couch with Mike Gill, where we answer more of the talk about more of the topics and answer more of the questions that you guys are asking after the show is over. Good night, everybody.